awesome. Hey, Cody, how's it going?
I'm good. How you doing, sir? Can you hear me?
I can. I hear you loud and clear. You sound fantastic, and I appreciate getting some time with you today. Cody, I am 49 years old, and wrestling has been a part of my life literally since I was a child. Sometimes I'm more into it than at other times. But it's been such a big part of my life, and so as a result, you and your family have been sort of a big part of my life. So when they were like, "Hey, do you want to talk to Cody Rhodes?" I was like, "Oh, hell yeah!"
Well, that's kind of part of the whole deal. That's I think from a fan perspective, fans always feel like perhaps we're part of their lives if we can give them something to remember, a moment to hang on to. But I tell people this quite often, especially after the shows when we just talking to the arena and not on TV. We feel the same way in terms of it's very mutual. We're in your lives, and you guys are in our lives, and that's how it should be, and that's really a great feeling and a great responsibility.
Now, I got to ask you this because obviously you wrestled in high school, and your dad was Dusty Rhodes. Was it hard to be on a wrestling team and wrestling other people? Obviously, high school wrestling being a different animal, but were people hard on you, or were people like blown away that it was Dustin Rhodes' kid that they were wrestling?
So in coming up and doing folk style wrestling, and no one in my family, Dusty hadn't done it, Dustin hadn't done it, nobody had done amateur wrestling. So for me, it was completely my own thing. It was new to the family. My dad didn't really even know how it was scored at first, but it was challenging just being around, not the kids I was wrestling, but they didn't care. It was more the parents of the kids. And I always kind of say, growing up where I grew up, East Cobb, a pretty, lovely place, and God bless it, it's my home, but it can be a little snooty at times. The air can be a little thin, and I think they always looked at Dusty as kind of Gomez Adams. He was this really odd, unique, figure, and they made a lot out of him. There were so many times where you'd hear people yelling, beat Dusty, and I'm thinking, he's not wrestling Dusty. We're 8 years old. My name is Cody, and we're wrestling at 95 pounds, for the Cherokee County gold medal. But those type experiences really help you, because I learned very quickly and grew up very fast, having to share the equity with my father, and perhaps when it wasn't fair to do so, but just that's part of being a second or a third generation in any field you go into.
Yeah. It's funny. I've actually got a couple of buddies in the radio industry whose fathers were were also in the business. And, I think there's an expectation, but there's also, I don't even know what the word is. I look at somebody like, obviously, Dwayne Johnson, whose father was a wrestler. And it seems like there's a lot of legacies like that, too. Did your dad encourage you to get into wrestling? Is that something you had thought about doing, or is that just kind of something that developed as you got older?
Both my dad and my mom did not encourage, and they didn't discourage. They really wanted me to wrestle at Penn State. I had the opportunity, a scholarship offer to do so, and they wanted me to further my education. My mom's still very big. My nephew's going through the same thing right now. They might step into pro wrestling, but also they're at the University of Texas. They're getting their education. For me, I never wanted to do anything but. And once I told my father that, it became all the encouragement in the world. But the thing he did different from some other dads I've seen, and some dads have actually taken this same attitude towards it as well, is he completely stepped outside. He came off the Raw and SmackDown writing team. He linked me with people who were very different, adverse to his style, and unique in their own way, so that I could be trained completely as my own thing and not just a tribute act to Dusty. He was very hands-off, but he was 110% encouraging me once I decided I wanted to do this.
This is another super interesting thing. I make this comparison, and again, I tell you, I've been a wrestling fan my whole life, and there's times where I watch it weekly, and there's times where I'll go a year without watching it. I compare wrestling to soap operas. And let me explain why, because that probably sounds stupid right now. I don't know if you've ever watched soap operas, Cody, but you could watch General Hospital every day for 4 years. Then you could take 6 months off and watch one episode on Monday. Every single character, sort of as they're having conversations, gives you the backstory, right? And wrestling's the same way, where I could take some time off. I could throw SmackDown on. Cody Rhodes comes out. You're smack talking somebody. You're like, bet SummerSlam, and you did your... So you guys always... And that's why these things have the ability where, again, you could pretty much tune in at any time and just kind of pick up what's going on. Have you noticed that? Is that something that's intended? Or am I overthinking this?
No, I think a lot of times some of the better wrestlers and performers I've ever met, they've always looked at walking out for a SmackDown or a Raw or a major PLE, and they've always looked at it as, let's make this feel like it's the first time this audience has ever seen me, and that goes along with commentary, the entrance, the presentation. There is something about turning on to WWE and being very quickly able to jump right in and say, hey, that's my guy, that's my girl, even if you have been away from it. You're not, damaged by any means if you had taken some time off and you jump back in. If anything, you're rewarded, and some of the faces, and as companies change and titles switch and things of that nature, it's very easy to pick up. I just am loving that you compared it to a soap opera, only because my acting coach in Los Angeles, Howard Fine, so many people at the studio, they would go on to do soaps because they were what they dubbed emotionally available. They were able to take on some very ridiculous parameters and fun storylines that sometimes we do see in pro wrestling and sports entertainment and commit to them in a full, real, organic way. So I love that comparison. It works for me.
Good. All right. I said that, somebody thought I was crazy. The other thing I kind of want to ask you about, because I just think this is super interesting. I was talking to somebody about Vince McMahon and identity politics. And that is something that the WWE has been doing my entire life, in that there have always been, going back to when I was a kid, the Iron Sheik was the undisputed champion. And we had a whole thing going on with Iran at the time. And then Hulk Hogan showed up. And there was a lot of battles with him and Sergeant Slaughter, the Iron Sheik. And then as the Cold War really kicked in the mid-'80s, Nikolai Volkov, British Bulldogs. People obviously like the British, and they like people with accents. It just seemed like if you look, and they were African-American champions in tag team, thinking of Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson. Vince McMahon was ahead of his time in understanding that if there's characters I can identify with, you got a fan for life. And I think it's brilliant.
I always am kind of quick to point out that pro wrestling in general, all of it, did a lot of things that were ahead of its time. If you look at, when the color barrier was broken in baseball versus when it was breached in the wrestling scene. If you look at what JYD as top star and Ernie the Big Cat Lad, with what they were doing, that's something I always look for. All the faults and things that we got wrong, it's nice to look back and know a lot of things. For example, the first time, Roman Reigns is one of WWE's biggest stars and one of the greatest champions in company history. The first time I ever got to see Samoan culture was through pro wrestling, and it was presented in a way that was powerful and athletic, and just really kind of brought everyone up to the same level. So I'm always happy to see that.
About a year and a half ago, I got a chance to interview Tito Santana, who I found out that's not his name. This great Mexican hero I found out is also from Texas. And not from Mexico. And again, I just thought, brilliant. I think it was Chief Jay Strongbow wasn't Native American. He was Italian. And again, I thought, the brilliance behind bringing different characters to the table was genius. Now, as I was talking to Tito Santana, maybe it was 2 years ago, Drew McIntyre was the champion. And I wasn't following it as much. He kind of came out of the scene, and I thought, who is this guy? And I had said to one of my buddies who does a podcast on wrestling, I'm like, this is like one of the first times in my life. I asked him who the champion was. He said Drew McIntyre, and I was like, I don't even know who that is. It was shocking to me. And while we were interviewing Tito Santana, I asked Tito Santana if he knew who the champion was, and he didn't. It was like tip of his tongue. He's like, oh, what's that guy's name? And I went, it doesn't matter what his name is. The point was made. If we don't know who the WWE champion is, that's bad news. You're currently the SmackDown WWE champion. I think that's super important. You're a very known commodity. And I feel like everything's better with the world when I know exactly who is the man in the WWE.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I'm not going to tell Drew you said that. 'Cause he's gonna be on this,
Please don't.
He's going to be on this Hartford show too. I'm blessed. I'm incredibly lucky. Yeah, we worked our butt off in terms of the journey I've been on, and one thing in particular, like I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, Hartford matters a great deal to me in terms of the history of our industry and the business and moments that can happen. I'd be completely tickled if we get there, and I am wrestling Drew McIntyre. But I do like to hear that the WWE champion, when known, that's a good thing. And to be able to be part of the company right now during its most prolific era, and to be able to be one of those who are leading the charge as undisputed WWE champion, it's really the honor of my life. And I look forward to Hartford, and I look, tickets are available. I look forward to it. I'm excited about that show.
Yeah.
You're telling me I got to wrap up, by the way.
All right, yeah, let's wrap you up. I appreciate you. December 13th, WWE Friday Night SmackDown is at the Civic Center. Cody Rhodes, what an honor to talk to you, my man. Best of luck, and we'll see you in Hartford in a couple weeks.
Yes, sir. Hopefully we get the chance to meet. Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thanks a lot, brother. Bye-bye.